Okay, so we are starting graphing, and the first form that we're looking at is slope-intercept form. Okay, hopefully this looks familiar. M is my what? Anybody remember? Slope. Remember, your slope is always touching your x, okay? And then what's the number after? That's your y-intercept. So that's why we call this slope-intercept form, because it gives you your slope and it gives you your y-intercept. The cool thing about this form is you can graph it right away. There's no solving or anything you have to do before you're able to graph it. That's why we like this form. That's why this form is easier for us. Okay, so linear equation is an equation whose graph is a line, a straight line. If you notice in linear, doesn't it have the word line? Yeah. Okay, and then it contains one or two variables. Usually two, usually an x and a y, right? We're going to talk about the special cases that only have one variable here in a minute. Okay, so then it says, if given a point and slope, then first plot the point and then the slope for that from that point. Okay, anytime you're given a point and a slope, you can plot your graph. Well, slope-intercept form gives you your y-intercept and your slope. So if given in slope-intercept form, then plot the y-intercept first, and and then from that point do the slope. That's your rise over run. Bless you.
What did it say? The y minus intercept?
Oh, y-intercept, intercept. Okay. I know there's lots of words here, but it's there if you need it, especially on your assessment, so on and so forth, okay? So, let's actually jump to like graphing. Okay, so the first one, example 1, says graph the line that passes through the point 2, -4, and has a slope of -2/3. So I want you to realize this is my x, this is my y, this is my x-axis, this is my y-axis. So over +2, down 4, a height of 4. Of -4. Okay, so there's my point, 2, -4. Yes? Okay, then my slope. Now, if you look here, where's the negative? Is it on top or bottom, or is it in the middle? In the middle. Do you think it matters where you assign the negative? It actually does not. Watch this. If I take my calculator and I do -2/3, or I do 2 divide -3, did it give me anything different? No, it gave me the exact same thing. So we're going to kind of talk about that here in just a second, but for now we're going to focus on it. I always put it on top. That's just what I do. Okay, so -2, remember it's rise over run, but do you go up or down with a negative? Down. And then always go to the right when the bottom is positive. So go down 2/1, 2, 3. Down 2/1, 2, 3. Okay, now I've run out of space. Now have I graphed that point, the points all the way across though? No. We can go. We have all this space over here to follow that pattern. So that's what I'm saying, is if you move that negative to the bottom, now you rise 2, but you go left 3, right? And now does that follow the pattern? If I go up 2, left 3, did it work? Yeah, it still follows my pattern. So up 2, left 1, 2, 3. Up 2, left 1, 2, 3. And there's my graph. I will not judge your line drawing skills. Mine are usually pretty terrible. I'll have like dots over here and a line over here, and I'm like, whatever, it's close enough. But if you are some of my students who really like pretty lines, the coolest part about having an ID badge is it's your own personal, like, perfect size straight edge, okay? You're welcome. Just kidding. So that's one way to graph it. Okay, so then we're given example 2, which gives me an equation. Okay, what did we say f of x means? Does anybody remember? It's a fancy way of saying what? Y equals. This is just saying y equals -2x minus 5. Now, what is What is my slope? -2. And what is my y-intercept? -5. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and go to my y to the skyline and put a point at -5. Because that's my y-intercept. That's the point that that equation gives me. And now, we always want our slope in what form? Fraction form. Okay, when we're given a whole number, what can we put on the bottom? A 1, because think about it. What's -2 divided by 1? -2, right? So did it change? No, we just put it into a fraction. So when we make it a fraction, what does that tell me to do? Not quite. Up or down? Down 2, right 1. So down 2, right 1, down 2, right 1. Okay, then we can also do the opposite. So up 2, left 1. I do want you to plot your points all the way across. Okay, just because it makes it 100 times easier for me to check and for you to draw a straight line. I promise it helps. Okay, now one thing I want to ask that's kind of extra notes. Okay, well first off, I want you to know that rise over run is your slope. And the top, I know it says rise, but it can go up or down. Up if positive, down if negative. And run is side to side, and it also can go left or right. Okay, right is positive, left is negative. So that's just something good to remember. Okay. And on top of that, what if I gave you an equation y equals 5x? I thought I heard rain. Sorry. What's my slope? 5 over 1 or 5. And what's my y-intercept? 0. Okay, it doesn't tell me, but that's because it's 0. Because adding 0, y'all, why would we write equations and put plus 0? We know that doesn't change anything, so we don't put it there. So if you have just a slope, you are starting at the origin. Okay, another thing too is what if I have y equals x? What's my slope? 1. Okay, and then remember, if we're going to graph it, we want to do 1 over 1. Okay, just a couple reminders of questions I got last period, okay? So then we have Hoivux. Who remembers Hoivux, or at least hearing Hoivux? No? Terrible teachers, except those of you that had me. Y'all obviously learned this. I'm just kidding. Okay, does anybody remember from Algebra 1 the Slope Dude video? With that like weird monotone voice guy, and he's like, Slope Dude. Talking about skiing. Oh my gosh, y'all are all failing Algebra 1. I'm just kidding. Hopefully you already passed. Okay, so it talks about different slopes and this guy skiing, and it's kind of funny because it's like this weird monotone voice the whole time, like, Slope Dude did this, or whatever. I don't know. I'm not going to act it out for you. But, thank you. If you were to go skiing on a flat surface like this, how much fun would you have? Thank you. Thank you. How much fun would you have skiing on a flat surface? None. That's why we don't ski in Texas, because, I mean, let's be honest, not much of Texas gets snow, and it's flat and boring. If you don't mind, it's flat and boring. You would be bored, okay? So this would be 0 fun. Well, guess what your slope is? 0. Look at that. Okay, so HOI stands for horizontal. 0 slope. I know it's an O, but it's 0. Okay, and then it's a y equals equation. I know that says f of x, but isn't that the same thing as saying y? It's just a fancy way of saying y equals -3. So horizontal, 0 slope, y equals equation. Okay, it's also known as a constant function. Constant function. The reason behind that is because another word for y-intercept is your constant. And doesn't all this give you as your y-intercept? Because 0 times x is 0, so that's gone. Okay, and one more trick to remember is a z for 0 slope. Okay, you can use the line to draw z. Now, a vertical line, if you remember this video of monotone dude and slope dude, is when he's like, and then he came to the cliff and screamed the worst curse word possible in math. And he said undefined and fell off the edge. Okay, yeah, that's what happened. Okay, just in case you were wondering. But he did it way better because of his monotone voice. I'm not as exciting. Okay, so I want you to realize you can draw U, undefined slope. And this stands for vertical, undefined, and x equals equation. Okay, any questions with those special cases? Okay, when you're done writing that, go ahead and flip. I know the back looks super wordy, but it really is not going to take us but like 2 or 3 minutes. Okay, so now the other form of line that you could see is standard form. Okay, so A, B, and C must be integers. Do y'all know what integers are? You probably know, but you're scared you're wrong. It's just a fancy way of saying numbers. Okay, with no GCF, and A must be positive to be proper standard form. Okay, now, I know in Algebra 1, a lot of what was taught is to solve for y, and that makes me cringe, and it probably makes you cringe too, and that's okay. We're not going to do all that. There's another way to do this. Okay, so it says to find the slope and intercepts, plot the x-intercept and y-intercept unless you got a fraction. So x-intercepts, isn't y equals 0 for an x-intercept? Right? So plug it in and solve. And guess what it's going to give you? Your x-intercept. X-intercepts are where y equals 0, so it's going to give you that intercept. Okay, and then y-intercepts are where x equals 0. So again, you'll plug in and solve. Okay, we also call this the cover-up method, and I'll show you why in just a second. Cover-up method. Now you can also find your slope. It's negative a over b to get the slope. Now, we do tell you that if you wanted, you could solve for y and put it in y equals mx plus b form and do what we did on the front. So if that's more comfortable for you, you do you. Okay? Cover-up method, in my opinion, is easier and quicker. Okay, so if you notice, we're given a standard form equation. Okay, we can't just graph that right away. So we're going to go ahead and try to find our x-intercept. So I want you to realize x-intercepts are where y equals 0. So I'm going to rewrite it, but with y as 0. What's anything times 0? So guess what? You cover it up. And how would you solve for x? Divide both sides by 4. And what does x equal? 4. So then this gives me the point 4, 0, and that's a point I can graph. Does that make sense? You can literally just cover up the other variable and solve, and it'll give you that intercept. So again, Y-intercepts are where x equals 0, so we're going to plug in the same equation, but this time with x equals 0. Cover up. How would I solve this? Divide both sides by 2. Guys, half of the time y'all probably won't even need to do the math, and what does this tell me? Y equals 8. So I know that point is 0, 8 because I plugged in x is 0. And I'm going to plot that point. Now, to plot all the points in between, you could do rise over run right here, or you can just do slope is negative a over b. What's a? 4. So negative 4 over b. What's b? 2. Okay, now what's that simplified? What's negative 4 divided by 2? Negative 2, but if we want to leave it as a fraction, what are we going to put on the bottom? 1. And now negative 2 over 1 tells me to go down to right 1. Down to right 1. Did it lead me back to the other point? Yes. Was that bad? No. Okay, you don't even technically have to rewrite the equation, y'all. So I'm going to show you that on the next one. That's why we call it the cover-up method. It's not so you can rewrite it every time. It's so you literally don't have to rewrite it every time. I'm going to give y'all a minute. Okay, so knowing this, okay, if I want to solve for my x-intercept to cover up y, what does that tell me right away? Do I even have to solve? What does it say? X equals what? X equals 7. So that gives me the point 7, 0. Now, when I cover up x, what would I do here to solve for y? Divide by negative 3, and I'd get 7 over negative 3. Is that a pretty point that I can even plot? No, so it doesn't really even help me. Does that make sense, y'all, that when I didn't rewrite it, we just cover it up? Now, can you rewrite it if you want? Yes, but I wanted to show you that's why we call it the cover-up method, is because don't rewrite it, just cover it up. If you need to rewrite it, that's totally okay. So now, what is my a here? If there's no number, what is a? 1. So when I have negative a, I made it negative, over b, which is negative 3, 2 negatives makes a. So this becomes a positive 1/3 slope, which means I'm going to rise 1, run 3. What's the only point that was given that I can plot? My x-intercept or my y-intercept? X. Okay, I can't plot a fraction. I mean, you can, but it's not going to be accurate. Okay, and then we're going to do our slope, which is rise 1, run 3. Now, you'll notice I only was able to do it once. Well, what if I did negative 1 over negative 3? It's still positive, right? So I can go down 1, left 3. Any questions with that? Comments, concerns?